So I just finished watching the 9th episode and also second to last episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2, the episode being Subspace Rhapsody, and this is a musical. So, when the idea of a Star Trek musical, when I heard that this episode, I was like, oh, interesting, could be very interesting, though unexpected, mainly because I would have expected something more like Lower Decks to have a musical episode before one of the live action shows. Just seems to fit their vibe a little better. But I correctly predicted that there was going to be some kind of, weird anomaly that causes them to break out in singing. It was basically, just to cut it short, they were studying a fold in subspace, and they were trying to use it to improve communications. They sent a song through, and that's what started it. So it makes me wonder if they said obviously by sending regular communicative text, nothing happened, but what if they set something else through? But the song was specifically, I think, an old show tune, like that you would have heard in a musical, and that's, I think, why, like, say if they sent an opera song through, would they were singing be different because of that? Because basically the episode literally follows musical rules. They literally call it out. They get meta on it, how they start singing when, basically in heightened emotion, all that. Like, they essentially got meta about the narrative through the realm of music and musicals, which I thought was pretty hilarious. But so a lot of character development did get advanced in this episode. A fair amount. So Laurent's crush on Cook is resolved. Basically, nothing's going forward there, but that does make sense after all. And also, I think, like, she literally has a solo, and you can tell the song is not just about her crush on Cook, just about her not letting anyone into her life in any sense. Being kind of emotionally closed off to other people, which, doesn't make sense. I'm building off of that we've seen this is something she struggled with. She's not really close to anyone. Like, seems like her best friend is Una. So yeah, she definitely could delve into making some more friendships and that. And so maybe this is going to be the start of that for her. There's also, dealing with the plot and between Spock and Nurse Chapel. And basically, Chapel has accepted for another fellowship that's going to take her off the Enterprise, but she doesn't tell Spock right away. Though, at the same time, probably she would have told him in her own way, but in order to, because when Spock and Uhura were investigating what's going on, trying to figure out, okay, what is going on? How can we stop this? They figure out what's causing it, but they don't have the data to solve it. So, the door to the ship's spot opens up when they walk past, and Uhura has, okay, we'll find out. So Uhura basically prompts that between Nurse Chapel and Spock. And you can actually tell after that song, Spock is a little more distant with Nurse Chapel, but he also has a whole song where he sings about his own feelings, but in very much a Vulcan way, which is actually quite impressive, but it does kind of make sense. Yes, he has emotions, but he's still going to interpret them as logically as possible, so even if it's an emotional thing, going to be if this, then that kind of deal, and that's kind of almost the way he looks at it, which is actually kind of a logical way of looking at emotions when you think about it, which does explain, I think, a little bit more what we see later, where he doesn't show his emotions, but we know he has them. But yeah, there's other things here and there too. Could even mention Cook, as I alluded to, is in the episode, and he does some singing as well, but not as much. But we do get a call out to Carol Marcus and that she's pregnant with their son, which we know because the Raffican is going to be David Marcus. So that little drop though, not much, but also explains why Lon and Cook don't pursue a relationship at this point, and probably won't. But it's kind of nice to, what this does is show more about Cook's character at this stage in his life as well. He's not the Cook of the TOS yet. He's not that cook quite yet, which makes sense. He's still a fairly young officer. He's literally shouting along in this episode to learn more about commanding. So it kind of, builds up strong that this is not quite the cook we're familiar with yet. He still has some growing to do, which makes perfect sense. But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff. I could talk about every musical number, but I've talked about, I think, the important ones besides Uhura's solo number, and that's essentially when she figures out what they need to do, meaning they need to basically get everyone on board the ship singing in order to overwhelm the subspace anomaly field, wherever, in order to get it to collapse in on itself. And of course, her song is very much about her being alone, but not being alone, because she connects everyone together as a communications officer. Very meta in that regard, but I would say probably the song that was the most meta about describing what they do is probably the first song, where they literally sing about their status report, which is just hilarious. But, so, as I was alluding to though, with Uhura's solo, she figures out they basically need to do a grand finale, and like I said, to overload. And so, she gets everyone to start singing, and so lots of things, close, like, Chopper admits that she'll miss everyone on the Enterprise, which makes sense, because she does eventually come back to the Enterprise. There's so much to break down, though. I'm not even talking about this from a musical series standpoint, because I cannot, but I'm just talking about more from a storytelling standpoint. There is a lot to break down, and I do hope they explore it more in the future, the plot points they bring up. Granted, there's only one episode left, but there's always season 3 too. But I do also hope there are people out there who will break down these songs and what the songs are trying to say in their music. But yeah, the grand finale is amazing. Really, everyone's singing. There's even some dancing. But they even hear the Klingons, and the Klingons start singing. Now, this is actually, I think, a very interesting thing. Earlier in the episode, basically the Klingons sent a message that they're going to destroy the sources of dishonor. Granted, we know Klingons do like to sing on board their ships, and Klingon operas are apparently very popular, and it's often mentioned songs of the deeds of great warriors and all that. There's lots of reference to that, so we know Klingons are not opposed to singing. But then we saw how they were singing during the grand finale when the Enterprise hails them. It's not any kind of thing we would expect out of Klingons. It's very... I think I'm not the best identifier of music genres, but it might have been something like rap or K-pop. I'm not quite sure, but I think that is why the Klingons were dishonored. It was the style of music. Because let's remember, this all started on a predominantly human starship of Starfleet. And the music choice was more of a show tune, a musical tune that started it all. So the Klingons are seen as different from the Federation, from the standpoint of the Federation. So I think in the terms of the narrative, the probability that's causing on this, because of that subspace field anomaly, wherever, that they would be singing in a way that would not necessarily actually be reflective of their musical culture, their way of telling stories through song, but would be reflective of a more human way. So the musical style is very much Western. So what's not a Western musical genre that people still sing and tell stories in? That is, I think, how they were going through here. So if the Klingons were singing their equivalent of sea shanties or Klingon operas or just of their great deeds in battle, then sure, they would probably be fine with it. But it was how they were singing, and probably was singing in such a way that wasn't a part of the Klingon culture. And because you can definitely tell, when they were done singing that one really brief scene, they looked at each other like, what did we just do? So, I got the feeling that this is not a musical genre they sing. This is not a Klingon musical genre. And that is why they were calling it dishonor, because they were being forced to sing, but it wasn't just being forced to sing, it was being forced to sing in a genre that wasn't of their culture. I think that might have been what it was getting at there. The Klingons are dishonored when they sing in the non-Klingon culture, which is actually a very Klingon thing, especially Klingons on this time frame. But yeah, it is just hilarious how that was. But I do think it says something very interesting about Klingons. Yes, other sources in canon, like I said, have established that Klingons do sing and have their own musical genres. But they didn't sing in their musical genre. Now, maybe they were trying to introduce a new genre of Klingon music, but I don't think so. The body language and facial expressions of the Klingons before and while and after they were singing, and also the fact they were going to destroy the anomaly, kind of does tell me that they don't mind that this singing was dishonorable to them. Which it will also make sense. Also, maybe if one Klingon started singing about his cowardice, that also would be seen as dishonorable too. So, I'm not a coward. This whatever anomaly is making me do that. We gotta go destroy it. I can also see that being done too, because Klingons like singing about their honor, their strength, their glory, not necessarily about their cowardice. Sure, you got I'm just gonna mention Deep Space Nine with Martok when they were all in that Martok Wolf, Bashir and Garrick and a few others were in that Jem'Hadar Dominion prison. There was not too many others. But the crazy thing I kind of think in that is, not crazy thing, but Martok mentions, he will write a song telling of basic wolf deeds, and then also talks about Dr. Bashir bandaging the wolf. It would be a verse in the song. Of course, Garrick makes this line at a point. He says that a line or a verse about the Cardassian who basically was unable to help them get out because the claustrophobia would ruin the general song. That, combined with that, and plus what we see here, it definitely tells me that Klingons don't like thinking about cowardice and shirking from responsibility, if you will. And I'm thinking, perhaps we didn't see it on screen, but they're singing not in their genre, not in their style, and not of a story that they like. A story that maybe a song that highlights their cowardice or their failings. That is something Klingons would not tolerate and would consider dishonorable. Just some food for thought right there. I probably spoke more about that in terms of in-depth from that one little bit of Klingon singing, but I think it really does say a lot about Klingon culture, and perhaps it gives us an insight that we haven't really seen before in Klingon culture. But yeah, they do eventually successfully stop singing and all that. Of course, the horse still humming it at the end, and she says it's just an earworm. And it is an earworm. It's actually, there was, I think, only one song with the melody reprised, I think. But yeah, there was a lot of great stuff, but like I said earlier, I'm actually surprised Strange New Worlds did a musical episode before Lower Decks. I'm just honestly surprised at that. But I will say, this is not the first time there's been music in Star Trek. We had the horror singing in an episode of the original series, and there's been other elements of singing, like we had Vic Fontaine singing in Deep Space Nine, the Doctor occasionally sang in Voyager, but those episodes were never musicals. You had times when one of those characters who did sing would sing in such a way that would help that would advance the story or just to show some downtime. But you never really had before music being a part of the main story throughout the entire episode. The closest might be one of the Vic Fontaine episodes, but even of Deep Space Nine, but even then, not quite. This was truly a true musical episode with spontaneous singing by non-singers, people who don't sing for a living or enjoy singing and sing whenever they get a chance. None of our characters are known for singing, so this is an actual musical number in a musical episode. But yeah, I think I'm getting a bit too much into the meta of all this. But yeah, I'm going to leave you guys with my concluding thoughts. I thought this was a pretty good episode. I will admit, not all the songs hit that well musically. Graham, not the best, but I know when I like a song and when I don't like a song. But I do think a lot of it does have to do is, I don't think a lot of these actors are professional singers, because some of the times, like, I thought the music is kind of loud, I can't hear the voice, and I think that might have been intentional, especially if they were using autotune to deal with some of the non-singers' lack of singing ability. Now, that doesn't mean, now some of them you can definitely tell can sing, but not all of them. But yeah, This was definitely an experiment, and I think it turned out pretty well. It gave us a unique way of exploring our characters and even exploring the Star Trek universe, but mostly our characters. But that concludes my review. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. And of course, thank you for watching, and live long and prosper. Thank you for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to like, upvote, and share the video. Also consider subscribing and following the channel if you haven't done so yet, and to ring that bell on YouTube to get notified of when new videos release. The link tree in the description links to all my social media. Check it out if you are interested, and once again, thank you for watching, and as always, have a good day, a good night, wherever you are. May the force be with you, always.